The real advantage of the 1% is not money, connections, or privileged access to opportunity. Those are surface level explanations people cling to because they're easy to see and easy to blame. The truth is far less visible and far more powerful. The real advantage of the 1% is internal control, the ability to govern their thoughts, emotions, reactions, and decisions when pressure rises and certainty disappears. That control is what quietly compounds into everything else people admire from the outside. Most people live in reaction mode. Their behavior is dictated by how they feel that day, what just happened to them, or what someone else said. When motivation is high, they act. When motivation drops, they wait. Their progress rises and falls with their emotions. The 1% understand early that emotions are unreliable leaders, feelings change hourly, discipline doesn't, so they train themselves to act from principles instead of moods. They don't ask, "What do I feel like doing today?" They ask, "What does the situation require?" That single shift creates consistency where others experience chaos. Internal control shows up most clearly during discomfort. When uncertainty appears, most people panic internally even if they look calm on the outside. They rush decisions, seek reassurance, or freeze completely. The 1% do the opposite. They slow down. They regulate their breathing, their thinking, their impulses. They understand that clarity is impossible when emotions are loud. By staying internally steady, they can see options others miss. While people around them are reacting, they are observing, and observation always beats reaction. Another overlooked aspect of internal control is the ability to delay gratification without emotional struggle. The average person knows they should wait, invest, practice, or prepare, but emotionally they resent the wait. They feel deprived. The 1% reframe delay as strategy. They don't feel punished by patience because they've trained their mind to associate waiting with winning. This allows them to work quietly, build slowly, and stay focused long after others have burned out chasing quick rewards. Internal control also means separating identity from outcomes. Most people tie their self-worth to results. When they fail, they don't just lose a round. They lose confidence, motivation, and self-respect. The 1% don't do this. They see outcomes as feedback, not verdicts. A loss doesn't define them, it informs them. Because their identity is stable, they can absorb failure without emotional collapse. That stability allows faster recovery, clearer thinking, and better decisions the next time. The 1% are also highly selective about what they allow into their mental space. They don't consume information randomly. They don't argue with everyone. They don't engage every opinion. They understand that attention is a finite resource, and wherever attention goes, energy follows. By controlling inputs, what they watch, listen to, think about, they maintain clarity in a world designed to create distraction and emotional fatigue. Perhaps the most uncomfortable truth is that internal control makes the 1% immune to excuses. When you can regulate your emotions, you can't hide behind fear, stress, or overwhelm. Responsibility becomes unavoidable. That's why most people never develop this advantage. It's easier to blame circumstances than to master yourself. The 1% choose the harder path early. Self-command. Over time, this internal mastery compounds. Calm beats chaos. Consistency beats intensity. Self-control beats talent. While others look for external upgrades, better tools, better timing, better luck, the 1% refine the one asset that determines how all others are used, the mind. And once you control that, the outside world eventually has no choice but to follow. Emotional regulation separates winners from everyone else because life does not reward the most emotional person in the room. It rewards the most stable one, the person who can think clearly when pressure rises, who can stay grounded when things go wrong, and who can move forward without needing the world to feel comfortable first. That skill alone creates a gap so wide that talent, intelligence, and hard work struggle to cross it. Most people believe emotions are something to be expressed, followed, or obeyed. If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel discouraged, they stop, If they feel offended, they react. Their inner state dictates their outer behavior that makes their progress unpredictable and fragile. Winners understand something early. Emotions are information, not instructions. Just because a feeling shows up does not mean it deserves control. Emotional regulation doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means being selective. It means choosing when emotions get a voice and when they don't. Winners feel fear, doubt, frustration, and disappointment just like everyone else. The difference is they don't hand those emotions the steering wheel. They acknowledge them, then proceed anyway. While others wait to feel confident, winners move with shaky hands and steady decisions. Pressure exposes this difference immediately. When stakes are high and outcomes are uncertain, most people become mentally noisy, their thoughts race, their judgment narrows, they overreact to small problems and miss long-term consequences. Emotional spikes hijack logic. Winners slow themselves down internally. They breathe deeper, they pause longer, they create space between stimulus and response. In that space lies clarity, and clarity is a competitive advantage. Emotional regulation also determines how people handle failure. For most, failure is not just an event, it's an identity attack. One loss becomes a story: I'm not good enough, I always mess things up. That emotional spiral kills momentum faster than any external obstacle. Winners separate failure from self-worth. They don't dramatize mistakes. They extract lessons without attaching shame. Because their emotions are managed, they can stay in the game longer, and staying in the game is how winning eventually happens. Another invisible advantage of emotional control is patience. Most people aren't impatient because they don't understand long-term thinking. They're impatient because waiting makes them uncomfortable. Silence feels like stagnation. Slow progress feels like rejection. Winners regulate that discomfort. They don't need constant reassurance. They don't panic when results lag behind effort. They trust process over emotion. That allows them to build things that take time while others quit out of frustration. Emotional regulation also protects focus. In a world engineered to provoke outrage, comparison, and anxiety, the ability to remain internally calm is rare. Most people leak energy through overthinking, arguing, and reacting to things that don't matter. Winners conserve mental energy. They don't attend every emotional battle they're invited to. They understand that attention is fuel, and they don't waste it on distractions that offer no return. Perhaps the hardest truth is this: emotional regulation removes excuses. Once you stop letting feelings control your actions, you can no longer blame fear for inaction or stress for inconsistency. Responsibility becomes unavoidable. That's why so few people master this skill. Emotional discipline demands honesty, self-awareness, and repetition. It's easier to stay reactive than to stay composed, but for those who commit to it, the payoff is enormous. Calm outperforms chaos. Stability outlasts intensity. Emotional regulation doesn't just separate winners from losers, it separates leaders from followers, builders from dreamers, and those who finish from those who always start over the 1%, are trained to be comfortable with uncertainty and delay because they understand a truth most people resist. Progress rarely comes with reassurance. The path to anything meaningful is unclear, uneven, and slow. Those who need guarantees never move far. Those who can function without them quietly pull ahead. Most people crave certainty before they act. They want to know it will work, that the timing is right, that the outcome will justify the effort. When certainty isn't available, they hesitate, they overanalyze, they wait for better conditions. What they're really waiting for is emotional safety. The 1% accept early that safety is an illusion. They move forward without clarity, trusting their ability to adapt rather than their ability to predict. Uncertainty doesn't disappear for the 1%. It simply stops being threatening. They train themselves to operate while questions remain unanswered. They make decisions with incomplete information. They commit without knowing exactly how things will unfold. This isn't recklessness, it's confidence in problem solving. While others freeze because they can't see the full picture, the 1% start with what they can see and adjust as reality reveals itself. Delay is where most people lose, not because waiting is hard intellectually, but because it's hard emotionally. Effort without immediate reward feels pointless to the average person. Silence is misinterpreted as failure. Slow progress feels like rejection. The 1% don't take delay personally. They understand that time is a filter. It removes the impatient, the emotional, and the undisciplined. Those who remain are the ones who win. They also understand compounding. Results rarely show up in proportion to effort at the beginning. Early work often looks invisible. The 1% are comfortable building without applause because they know momentum shows up late but arrives fast. They don't need daily validation to stay committed. Their motivation is anchored to direction, not feedback. Comfort with delay also changes how they experience pressure. While others rush decisions to escape discomfort, the 1% slow down. They resist the urge to force outcomes. They allow strategies to mature. This patience prevents costly mistakes driven by anxiety. Waiting becomes an active skill, not passive suffering. Another critical difference is how they use time during uncertainty. Most people distract themselves to escape discomfort. They numbed out with entertainment, comparison, or busyness. The 1% use uncertain periods to strengthen foundations. They learn, refine, prepare, and position themselves. When opportunity finally becomes visible, they're ready while others are scrambling. The 1% also understand that uncertainty is not a sign to stop, it's a signal that growth is happening. Predictable environments rarely produce extraordinary outcomes. New territory always feels unstable at first. Instead of interpreting uncertainty as danger, they read it as progress. That reframing turns fear into fuel rather than friction. Delay teaches emotional endurance. It forces patience, discipline, and self-trust. Those skills cannot be learned in comfort. The 1% don't avoid discomfort, they train inside it. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes normal. What once caused hesitation becomes routine. In the end, the advantage isn't knowing what will happen next. It's knowing you'll handle whatever happens next. Comfort with uncertainty and delay allows the 1% to move while others wait, to build while others doubt, and to arrive while others are still searching for permission to begin. They don't seek motivation, they operate from identity. That distinction alone explains why the gap between the 1% and everyone else keeps widening. Motivation is emotional, temporary, and unreliable. Identity is stable. It doesn't ask how you feel today. It tells you who you are and what you do, regardless of mood, energy, or circumstances. Most people live in a cycle of emotional dependence. They wait to feel inspired before they act. When motivation fades, so does their effort. They confuse desire with discipline and excitement with commitment. As a result, their progress is inconsistent. The 1% recognize early that motivation is a poor foundation for long-term results. It shows up randomly and leaves without warning. So instead of chasing motivation, they build an identity that makes action automatic. When behavior is tied to identity, choices become simple. A person who identifies as disciplined doesn't debate whether to do the work. A person who identifies as a builder doesn't stop building because conditions aren't perfect. Action is no longer a decision made daily, it's an expression of who they are. This removes friction. There is less inner negotiation, less resistance, less wasted energy arguing with themselves. Identity-based action also changes how setbacks are handled. When motivation-driven people fail, they interpret it emotionally. They feel discouraged, embarrassed, or defeated. They need another burst of inspiration to try again. Those who operate from identity see failure differently. A mistake doesn't threaten who they are. It's simply part of the process. They don't need to be motivated to continue because stopping would conflict with their self-concept. Another advantage of operating from identity is consistency under pressure. Motivation disappears fastest when life gets difficult. Stress, fatigue, criticism, and uncertainty drain emotional energy. That's when most people quit. The 1% continue because their behavior isn't powered by feelings, it's powered by alignment. Acting in accordance with identity creates internal stability even when the external world is unstable. Identity also dictates standards. Motivated people negotiate standards depending on how they feel. Identity-driven people don't. Their standards are fixed. They don't lower them on bad days or raise them only on good ones. This consistency compounds over time. Small actions done repeatedly, without drama, produce results that look extraordinary from the outside. Operating from identity also eliminates the need for external validation. When your actions are rooted in who you believe you are, praise becomes optional and criticism becomes less damaging. The 1% don't require applause to continue. They don't need to be seen to stay committed. Their reference point is internal. That internal alignment creates confidence that doesn't fluctuate with opinions. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of identity-based living is momentum. Once actions and identity are aligned, effort feels lighter. There's less resistance because you're not forcing yourself to become something. You're expressing what you already claim to be. Over time, behavior reinforces identity, and identity reinforces behavior. This feedback loop creates inevitability. In the end, the 1% don't wake up asking how to get motivated. They wake up asking how to execute. They don't wait for the right feeling. They rely on self-definition. And that is why they move forward on days when others stall, build when others hesitate, and finish what others only feel inspired to start. Most people lose psychologically long before they lose financially, and by the time the numbers confirm it, the real damage has already been done. The loss begins quietly, internally, long before it shows up in a bank account, a career, or a result. It starts the moment someone stops believing they can recover, adapt, or endure. Once the mind collapses, the outcome is only a matter of time. Psychological loss looks like hesitation. It looks like lowering expectations to avoid disappointment. It looks like choosing comfort over effort and calling it realism. People tell themselves they're being practical, but what they're really doing is protecting their ego from pain. They stop taking risks not because risks are bad, but because the emotional cost of uncertainty feels too high. From that moment on, the trajectory changes. Most financial failure is preceded by mental fatigue. People don't usually quit because they run out of opportunity. They quit because they run out of emotional resilience. Stress piles up, doubt grows louder. Small setbacks feel heavier than they should. Instead of seeing obstacles as temporary, they begin to see them as confirmation that it's not meant to work. That interpretation is the real defeat. Once someone loses psychologically, behavior changes. They stop being proactive and start being reactive. They avoid decisions. They delay action. They look for exits instead of solutions. Even when opportunities appear, they're approached half-heartedly without conviction. Effort becomes inconsistent. Focus becomes scattered. From the outside, it looks like bad luck or poor timing. On the inside, it's already over. Another sign of psychological loss is emotional overreaction to short-term outcomes. A single bad month feels catastrophic. A single rejection feels personal. Instead of maintaining perspective, people let temporary events define permanent beliefs. They stop playing the long game because emotionally they can't tolerate the short-term discomfort required to stay in it. Financial loss, when it finally arrives, often feels sudden, but it isn't. It's the result of weeks, months, or years of compromised decisions made by a compromised mindset. Cutting corners, avoiding hard conversations, failing to adapt, or refusing to invest in growth are rarely logical choices. They're emotional ones made after internal confidence has eroded. The most dangerous part is that psychological loss is invisible. There's no statement or alert that says you've stopped believing in yourself. It happens gradually. Standards drop, discipline weakens, hope turns into cynicism. People begin to explain away their potential rather than pursue it. And because nothing has collapsed yet externally, They convince themselves everything is fine. Those who win protect their psychology at all costs. They understand that mindset isn't about positivity, it's about resilience. It's the ability to stay clear, headed under pressure, to separate emotions from decisions, and to continue acting even when results lag behind effort. They address mental strain early before it shows up as financial damage. In the end, money follows behavior and behavior follows belief. Once belief is lost, behavior deteriorates, and once behavior deteriorates, outcomes are already decided. That's why most people don't fail financially first. They fail internally. The numbers just make it official.